Captain Hyunwoo pressed his face against the observation deck window, watching the endless black of space. His ship, the Trade Wind, had been searching this sector for 3 days without finding anything valuable. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium paid well for salvage, but empty space didn't pay the bills. "Captain, we're picking up something on the long-range scanners," called out his navigator, Ji-hoon. The young Zephyrian's tentacles danced over the control panel with practiced ease. Hyunwoo hurried to the bridge, his forearms moving in sequence as he climbed the ladder. On the main screen, a blip appeared against the star field. "What is it?" "Unknown vessel, sir. It's not moving. Looks dead in the water." As they drew closer, the ship came into view. It was unlike anything in the galactic databases. The hull was a dull gray metal, scarred with burn marks and punctured by what looked like weapon fire. Strange angular designs covered its surface, and thick armor plating suggested whoever built it expected trouble. "By the void," whispered Hyunwoo. "Look at the size of that thing." The ship was massive, easily 3 times longer than most civilian vessels. It drifted silently through space, its lights dark, its engines cold. No distress signals, no life signs, nothing but metal and silence. "Any idea what species built it?" asked Ji-hoon. Hyunwoo ran the ship's design through their databases. Nothing came up, no matches in any known civilization's records. "Could be from the outer rim, maybe beyond charted space." They moved closer, scanning the hull. The name Dawn's Hope was painted in strange symbols near what looked like the bridge. The letters were in a script none of them recognized. "Captain, I'm detecting cargo in the hold," reported their sensor operator Min-jun. "Looks like it's still sealed. Whatever happened to the ship, the cargo survived. That changed everything. Unknown alien technology could be worth a fortune on the black market." Hyunwoo felt his greed override his caution. "Prepare boarding shuttles, we're going aboard." The boarding party suited up in full environmental gear. They had no idea what atmosphere the ship might have held or what diseases might be floating around inside. The airlock opened with a hiss, revealing corridors that were too small for most galactic species but would fit the Zephyrians perfectly. Inside, the ship was a tomb. Emergency lighting cast red shadows on the walls. The gravity was heavy, much heavier than any civilized world would use. Hyunwoo's legs ached after just a few minutes of walking. "These beings must have been incredibly strong," he muttered, examining what looked like a control station. The chairs were built for creatures with only 2 arms and 2 legs, which seemed primitive and inefficient. They found the cargo hold deep in the ship's belly. The heavy doors had sealed automatically when the ship was damaged, preserving everything inside. What they found made their eyes widen with greed. Crates of unknown metal sat stacked to the ceiling. Strange weapons that hummed with energy even, though the ship was dead. Containers filled with devices they couldn't identify. And scattered throughout personal items that suggested the ship's crew had lived aboard for months or years. "Look at this," called Min-jun, holding up a small rectangular device. The screen was cracked, but symbols flickered across it. Some kind of data storage. Hyunwoo took it, running his translator over the surface. Most of the text was corrupted, but one word kept appearing over and over. "Human," he read aloud. "Never heard of them." Ji-hoon was examining what looked like clothing. "These are tiny. The crew must have been small, maybe half our size. How did they build something this massive?" They spent hours cataloging the cargo. Military equipment that looked primitive but felt dangerous. Personal belongings that spoke of lives cut short. Sealed containers marked with symbols they couldn't read. And most intriguingly, a large cylinder that hummed with some kind of preservation technology. "Captain, this container is still active," reported their engineer, Dong-hyun. "Whatever's inside, someone wanted it preserved." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. Something about this ship felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but sad. Like they were walking through a graveyard. But the trade consortium didn't pay him to have feelings. They paid him to bring back salvage, and this was the biggest score of his career. "Load everything onto our ship," he ordered. "Every crate, every device, every scrap of metal. We'll tow the ship back to the station and let the experts figure out what it all means. As they worked, none of them noticed the small device buried deep in the ship's computer core, a device that had been waiting, listening, recording their voices and their scanner signatures, a device that, once they powered up their salvage equipment, finally had enough energy to send out a single powerful signal into the darkness beyond known space. The Zephyrians had found their treasure, but they had also just announced to the galaxy that they had disturbed something that was never meant to be touched. Dr. Su Jin stepped off the transport shuttle at Zephyrian Trade Station Alpha, her collection bag slung over her shoulder. Word had spread through academic circles about the mysterious artifacts from an unknown species, and she couldn't resist the chance to study something completely new. The Harmonist Collective had sent her to dozens of archaeological sites across the galaxy, but this felt different. Most extinct species left behind ruins, monuments, or at least some record in the galactic databases. These humans had appeared out of nowhere, like ghosts from the void. Captain Hyunwoo greeted her at the docking bay, his forearms gesturing excitedly. "Dr. Su Jin, perfect timing. We've got the artifacts sorted and ready for examination. Never seen anything like them." She followed him through the station's corridors, past shops selling exotic goods from across the galaxy. Already she could see human items in some of the display windows. A strange tool here, an unknown device there. The speed at which the artifacts had spread surprised her. "How much have you sold already?" she asked. Hyunwoo's tentacles twitched with pride. "About 30%. Collectors love mystery items, especially from unknown species. The rarer, the better the price." In the examination room, Su-Jin spread out her instruments and began her work. The first thing she noticed was the weight. Everything was incredibly dense, built to withstand forces that would crush most galactic species. She picked up what looked like a simple hand tool. Her scanner revealed it was made from metals compressed under gravitational forces, far beyond anything found on civilized worlds. "These beings lived under crushing gravity," she murmured, making notes on her data pad. Next, she examined the clothing. The fabric was tough, designed for extreme conditions. Multiple layers suggested temperature variations that would kill most species. The cut and design showed bodies adapted for harsh physical labor. "Look at this," she called Hyunwoo over, holding up a boot. "See how thick the sole is, and these materials? They're designed to walk on surfaces that would burn through normal footwear." But it was the personal items that really told the story. A small device that appeared to be some kind of entertainment system showed images of a world that made Su-Jin's blood freeze. Massive storms that could flatten cities. Oceans that could swallow continents. Gravity so strong it would crush her bones. "Captain, do you realize what you've found?" she asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Valuable. Artifacts from a dead species?" Hyunwoo replied, confused by her reaction. "No. Evidence of a Deathworlder species. These beings evolved on a planet that would kill 90% of galactic life within minutes." She continued her examination, finding more evidence with each item. Tools designed to work in extreme heat and cold. Weapons built to function in environments where energy weapons would fail. Food containers made to preserve nutrition under conditions that would sterilize most organic matter. The genetic samples were the most revealing. Su-Jin's analysis showed DNA adapted for rapid healing, incredible bone density, and muscle fibers, designed for strength that defied galactic norms. These weren't just any extinct species. They were apex predators from a world that bred survivors. "I need to report this to the Galactic Council immediately," she told Hyunwoo. "Deathworlder species are extremely rare, and their artifacts require special handling protocols." But the captain was already distracted by incoming messages from buyers across the galaxy. The human artifacts were selling faster than he could catalog them. On Nexus Prime, Collector Jamin added a small human toy to his exotic species museum. The item looked harmless enough, a simple figure made of some unknown polymer. He had no idea it had belonged to a child whose parents were still alive somewhere in the darkness between stars. At the Galactic Research Institute, Dr. Young-Soo's team began studying the genetic samples they'd purchased. They planned to create a profile of this extinct Deathworlder species, maybe even attempt to clone tissue samples. The irony that they were studying the DNA of living beings never occurred to them. Military collectors on various worlds purchased human weapons, fascinated by their primitive but effective design. Kinetic projectile weapons that could function in any environment. Explosive devices that required no energy source. Combat gear built for warriors who expected to fight in hell itself. Meanwhile, deep in the salvaged ship's computer core, the beacon that had been quietly charging finally reached full power. The device had been recording every scanner signature, every voice, every detail about who had taken what from the Dawns. The signal it sent was unlike anything in the galactic communication networks. It traveled faster than normal transmissions, using quantum entanglement principles that most species had never mastered. The message was simple but urgent, containing coordinates, scanner data, and a detailed list of everything that had been taken. Somewhere in the darkness beyond charted space, another ship received that signal. On its bridge, beings who looked remarkably like the artifact's original owners stared at the data with growing rage. Dr. Su Jin finished her preliminary report and transmitted it to the Galactic Council. Her conclusion was clear. They had discovered evidence of an active Deathworlder species, not an extinct one. The artifacts showed signs of recent manufacture, and the preservation technology suggested the beings who built them were still alive. But by then, it was too late. Human artifacts had spread across dozens of worlds, sold to collectors who had no idea they were buying the personal belongings of someone's family members. Someone who was already on their way to get them back. The galaxy was about to learn why you never touch what belongs to a Deathworlder. The Zephyrian patrol ships were conducting their routine sweep of the outer system when space itself seemed to tear apart. First came the gravitational distortions that made their instruments scream warnings. Then reality twisted, and something massive dropped out of hyperspace. The ship that appeared was nothing like anything in the galactic databases. It was enormous, easily twice the size of a Zephyrian battlecruiser, but built with the same angular, brutal design as the Dawn's Hope. Dark armor plating covered its hull, and weapon ports lined its sides like the eyes of some ancient predator. Lieutenant Taeho, commanding the patrol, felt his blood freeze as he stared at the newcomer. "Get me Admiral Hyunwoo immediately," he whispered to his communications officer. "And alert all defense stations, we have an unknown contact." The human ship hung in space like a monument to war. No decorative elements, no artistic flourishes, just pure function designed for one purpose: to break things and kill people. Its name was barely visible along the hull. UES, Vengeance. Admiral Hyunwoo arrived at the command center within minutes, still fastening his uniform. The sight of the alien warship on the main screen made him pause. "Have they responded to our hails?" "No, sir. They're just sitting there, scanning our defenses." "How many ships like this do they have?" "Unknown, sir. This is the first we've seen of their military." Hyunwoo studied the readings his sensors were providing. The ship's energy output was massive. Its armor readings showed materials that shouldn't exist, and the gravitational field around it suggested technology far beyond galactic norms. "Bring the fleet to alert status. All ships, battle formation." That's when the communication request came in. The face that appeared on their screens was unlike anything they'd encountered. The being had only two eyes, positioned close together, above a flat nose and small mouth. Its skin was pale, marked with lines that suggested age and stress. But it was the eyes that made every Zephyrian in the command center step back. They were cold, calculating, and filled with barely controlled rage. "I am Commander Jin Ho of the United Earth ship, Vengeance," the being said in perfect galactic standard. His voice was quiet, controlled, but carried an undertone that made veteran soldiers nervous. "6 months ago, you salvaged one of our exploration vessels in the Kepler 442 system." Admiral Hyunwoo stepped forward, trying to project confidence. "Yes, we found a derelict ship. Standard salvage operations under galactic law. That ship was the Dawn's Hope. It belonged to my son's research team." Jinho's voice never changed. tone but somehow became more terrifying. They were scientists, not soldiers. They were exploring distant worlds looking for new homes for our people. "We're sorry for your loss," Hyunwoo replied, though he felt no sympathy. "But the ship was abandoned. We have legal salvage rights." Jin-ho's expression didn't change. "You have taken their personal belongings, their research, their genetic samples, items that belong to children who will never come home." He paused, and when he continued, every word was like ice. "You are grave robbers." The accusation hit harder than expected. Several Zephyrian officers looked uncomfortable. Even in their profit-focused society, disturbing the dead was considered taboo. "Look," Hyunwoo said, trying to regain control of the situation. "We understand you're upset, but business is business. We've invested significant resources in salvage operations, transportation, and storage. We'd be happy to sell back the items at fair market prices." The silence that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds. When Jin-ho spoke again, his voice carried the promise of violence. "You want to sell me my son's belongings?" "It's just business," Hyunwoo repeated, but his confidence was cracking. Something about this human commander made his survival instincts scream warnings. "My son Woojin was 24 years old," Jin-ho continued. "He had just graduated from the academy. This was his first deep space mission. He kept a picture of his girlfriend in his cabin along with letters from his mother." The human's hands, visible on screen, slowly clenched into fists. "You sold those letters to a collector on Nexus Prime for entertainment value. How did he know that?" Hyunwoo's mind raced. How could this creature possibly know the details of their sales? "The genetic samples you sold to the research institute contained the DNA profiles of my entire crew," Jin-ho continued. 12 young humans who volunteered to explore the unknown for the good of our species. You treated them like specimens." "We didn't know they were still alive," Hyunwoo protested, "but you didn't care to find out." Jin-ho leaned forward, and every Zephyrian in the command center felt like prey being studied by a predator. "You saw profit in the belongings of the dead, and you took it." Admiral Hyunwoo looked at his fleet readouts. 57 ships, including 12 heavy cruisers and 3 dreadnoughts. Surely one alien vessel, no matter how impressive, couldn't threaten them all. "Commander Jin-ho," he said, trying to sound reasonable. "We're willing to negotiate, but you're outnumbered 50-1. Be practical about this." The human smiled, and that expression was more terrifying than his anger had been. "Admiral, let me explain something about my species. We don't abandon our own. Ever. We don't forget our dead. And we don't negotiate with grave robbers. Are you threatening us?" "I'm educating you." Jin-ho's image leaned back in his command chair. "You have 48 hours to return every item taken from the Dawn's Hope. Every weapon, every tool, every personal belonging. The ship itself will be returned to us intact. And if we refuse?" Jin-ho's eyes grew colder. "Then you'll learn why the galaxy fears Deathworlders. You'll discover why humans are the only species to successfully wage war against 3 galactic empires simultaneously. You'll understand why we're called the Nightmare Species." The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian command center in stunned silence. Admiral Hyunwoo stared at the dark ship hanging in space like a promise of doom. Part of him wanted to return the artifacts immediately. But the trade consortium had invested millions in this salvage operation. The board of directors would never approve such a loss. "Send a message to Galactic Command," he ordered. "Request immediate military assistance, and prepare the fleet for battle." He had no idea he'd just signed his species' death warrant. The 48-hour deadline passed at exactly 1400 hours Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Hyunwoo watched the countdown timer reach 0 on his command screen, hoping the human would see reason and withdraw. Instead, the Vengeance simply hung there in space, dark and silent as death itself. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," reported his communications officer. Commander Jin-ho's face appeared on screen one final time. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had shifted. The controlled anger was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. Cold determination. Your time is up, Admiral, Jinho said quietly. You've chosen to keep what belongs to the dead. Now you'll learn why that was a mistake. The transmission ended. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The Zephyrian fleet held position. Energy shields at maximum, weapons charged and ready. 57 ships against one alien vessel. The odds seemed impossible to overcome. Then the Vengeance moved. What happened next defied everything the galaxy understood about space combat. The human ship didn't circle around for tactical positioning or attempt long-range engagement. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the Zephyrian fleet at speeds that should have torn it apart. "Incoming!" shouted Lieutenant Tejo from the lead cruiser. "All ships, open fire!" Energy beams lanced out from dozens of Zephyrian weapons, striking the human ship's hull. The beams should have penetrated any known armor, but they scattered harmlessly against the Vengeance's dark plating. The ship kept coming. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Hyunwoo. "No armor can deflect concentrated fire from an entire fleet." But the human ship wasn't deflecting the energy. It was absorbing it. The dark hull plating seemed to drink in the weapon fire, converting the energy into something else entirely. When the Vengeance finally returned fire, the weapons that emerged from its hull made every Zephyrian officer understand their mistake. No energy beams, no plasma bolts, just chunks of metal moving at incredible speeds. The kinetic projectiles punched through energy shields like they weren't there. Zephyrian ships, designed to deflect energy weapons, had no defense against simple metal moving fast enough to crack planets. The first cruiser exploded in seconds, then the second, then the third. "How are they doing this?" Admiral Hyunwoo demanded. "Kinetic weapons are primitive. They shouldn't work against modern defenses." His tactical officer was frantically analyzing the human attack patterns. "Sir, they're using magnetic acceleration systems we've never seen before. These projectiles are moving at near-light speeds." But the kinetic weapons were just the beginning. As more Zephyrian ships maneuvered to engage, the Vengeance demonstrated why humans were called Deathworlders. It rammed directly into a heavy cruiser at full speed. The collision should have destroyed both ships. Instead, the Zephyrian vessel crumpled like paper, while the Vengeance emerged with only surface damage. Its hull was designed for impacts that would vaporize normal materials. "They're using their ship as a weapon," breathed Dr. Sujin, watching from the research station. She had requested permission to observe the battle, hoping to document first contact with an active Deathworlder species. What she witnessed changed her understanding of warfare forever. More human ships began arriving. They didn't emerge from hyperspace gradually like civilized vessels. Instead, they tore through the fabric of space-time itself, their engines creating gravitational distortions that pulled Zephyrian fighters off course. Each new arrival was different but equally terrifying. Some were sleek and fast, designed for hit-and-run attacks. Others were massive dreadnoughts that shrugged off weapons fire while returning devastating volleys. All of them bore names that spoke of violence: retribution, fury, reckoning. But it wasn't just the technology that terrified the watching galaxy. It was the way the humans fought. "They're not following any recognizable combat doctrine," reported Admiral Hyunwoo's tactical officer. "They're willing to sacrifice their own ships to destroy ours." Dr. Sujin realized the truth first. "They're not just soldiers," she whispered into her recording device. "They're families, parents seeking their children." She was right. The crew of the Vengeance weren't military professionals in the galactic sense. They were volunteers, united by grief and determination. Commander Jinho's wife served as his tactical officer. The parents of the other dead researchers crewed the weapon stations. Siblings, friends, and loved ones filled every position. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose. The human fleet moved through the Zephyrian defenses like a force of nature. When energy weapons failed, they used kinetic projectiles. When kinetic weapons weren't enough, they rammed enemy ships. When ramming wasn't sufficient, they boarded vessels and fought hand-to-hand in corridors too small for their powerful frames. Admiral Hyunwoo watched his fleet dissolve around him. Ships that had served the trade consortium for decades were reduced to scrap metal in minutes. His crews, trained professionals with years of experience, fled in terror from enemies they couldn't understand. "Sir, we need to retreat," his second-in-command urged. "We've lost 30 ships already." "To one species we'd never heard of 6 months ago," Hyunwoo replied in shock. The remaining Zephyrian vessels pulled back to their main trading station, hoping the massive defensive platforms could stop the human advance. They sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, begging for military intervention. Unknown Deathworlder species attacking Zephyrian space, their emergency transmission. Read. Requesting immediate assistance, they fight like demons. But help was 3 days away at best. The humans would reach the station in 6 hours. As the human fleet approached their final target, Dr. Soo-jin made one last observation that would echo through galactic history. They're not conquering territory or seeking resources. They're not even trying to destroy us completely. They just want their dead back. The lesson was simple, but terrifying. Humans would cross any distance, fight any enemy, and pay any price to recover their fallen. They treated their dead with the same fierce protectiveness they showed their living. The galaxy was about to learn that some things were more dangerous than greed or ambition. Sometimes love was the most terrifying force in the universe. The massive trading station shuddered as the human fleet surrounded it like predators circling wounded prey. Admiral Hyunwoo stood in his command center, watching his remaining ships retreat beyond the station's defensive perimeter. 30 years of military service, and he'd never seen anything like the systematic destruction these humans had delivered. "Sir, incoming transmission," his communications officer reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Commander Jin-ho's face appeared on screen, but this time he wasn't sitting in his command chair. He was standing in what looked like an armory, strapping weapons to a suit of armor that made him appear more machine than living being. The suit was matte black, covered in plates that could deflect energy weapons, and equipped with systems that hummed with barely contained power. "Admiral Hyunwoo," Jin-ho said without looking at the camera, "I'm coming aboard your station. You have 15 minutes to gather every item taken from the Dawn's Hope and bring them to Docking Bay 7. Every weapon, every tool, every piece of clothing, every personal effect." "Commander, please," Hyunwoo tried to sound diplomatic. "Let's discuss this rationally. We can arrange a proper exchange, maybe even compensation for your losses." Jin-ho finally looked up and his eyes held no mercy. "My son kept a journal. In it, he wrote about the worlds he hoped to find, the families that could build new homes among the stars. You sold that journal to a collector who displayed it as a curiosity." He sealed his helmet and his voice became mechanically enhanced, more terrifying than before. 15 minutes, Admiral. Don't make me hunt for what belongs to my boy." Ryu. Transmission ended, leaving the command center in terrified silence. Dr. Soo-jin watched from the observation deck as a single human shuttle detached from the Vengeance. It wasn't a diplomatic transport or a cargo vessel. It was an assault craft designed to punch through station defenses and deliver death to anyone inside. "He's coming alone," she whispered to her recording device. "One human against an entire station." The shuttle docked with a sound that echoed through the station's hull like a death knell. Security teams rushed to defensive positions, but their hearts weren't in it. They'd seen what humans could do to military vessels. What chance did station security have against a warrior in powered armor? Admiral Hyunwoo made the smartest decision of his career. He ordered his security teams to stand down and began gathering the human artifacts personally. His hands shook as he handled items that had seemed like curiosities just hours ago but now felt like cursed relics. The first thing he collected was a small photo, slightly faded, showing a young human male with his arm around a female of the same species. Both were smiling, their faces full of hope and joy. This had been sold to a collector on Nexus Prime for 50 credits as an example of primitive emotional bonding. Next came the journal, filled with handwritten notes in the same script they'd found on the Dawn's Hope. The collector who'd bought it had displayed it as an artifact of an extinct species, never realizing the words described dreams that would now never come true. But it was the genetic samples that proved most difficult to recover. The research facility had already begun experiments, breaking down DNA sequences and cataloging biological information. Hyunwoo had to threaten military action to get them returned intact. Commander Jin-ho's footsteps echoed through the station corridors like thunder. His armor made him nearly 3 meters tall, and the weapons integrated into his suit could level entire city blocks. Station personnel pressed themselves against walls as he passed, too terrified to even breathe loudly. He found Admiral Hyunwoo in the main cargo bay, surrounded by crates containing everything taken from the Dawn's Hope. The Zephyrian was on his knees, trembling with fear that went beyond simple terror. This was the primal fear of a prey animal facing an apex predator. "Is this everything?" Jin-ho asked, his mechanically enhanced voice echoing in the vast space. "Yes," Hyunwoo whispered. "Every item we recovered, every piece we sold has been bought back and returned." Jin-ho began examining the contents, his armored hands moving with surprising gentleness as he handled his son's belongings. He found the photo and held it for a long moment. Then the journal, reading several pages before closing it carefully. Finally, the genetic samples, each container marked with names that meant nothing to the Zephyrians but everything to him. "My son's name was Woo Jin," Jin-ho said quietly, still kneeling among the recovered items. He wanted to find new worlds where human children could grow up under different stars. He believed the universe was big enough for everyone. "Admiral," Hyunwoo said nothing. What could he say? Jin-ho stood slowly, towering over the trembling Zephyrian. "But you didn't see a scientist or an explorer. You saw profit. You saw the belongings of the dead as merchandise to be sold." "We didn't know," Hyunwoo managed to whisper. "You didn't care to know." Jin-ho's helmet retracted, revealing his face. Tears ran down his cheeks, but his expression remained hard as steel. "You treated my child like he was already forgotten." The human commander activated his suit's communication system, broadcasting on all galactic frequencies. Every species in known space would hear what came next. "I am Commander Jin-ho of the human species," he said, his voice carrying across light years of space. "6 months ago, my son and his research team died in an accident while exploring distant worlds. Today, I recovered their remains and belongings from scavengers who saw profit in grave robbing." He paused, looking directly at Admiral Hyunwoo. "We are human. We remember our dead. We honor those who came before us. We protect our own across any distance, through any danger, against any enemy." His voice grew harder, carrying a promise that made entire civilizations shiver. "We will cross the galaxy to bring our people home. We will fight anyone who disturbs their rest. Touch what belongs to us, and we will remind you why the universe fears Deathworlders." The human fleet began loading the recovered artifacts with a care that spoke of love rather than duty. Each crate was handled like it contained priceless treasures, which to them it did. Dr. Soo-jin watched the Vengeance prepare to depart, her scientific mind trying to process what she'd witnessed. "They came across interstellar space to recover personal belongings," she recorded. "They fought an entire fleet for items that have no strategic value. They did this not for territory or resources, but for love." As the human ships powered up their engines, Admiral Hyunwoo received one final message from Commander Jin-ho. "Tell the galaxy what you learned here today. Tell them humans don't forget, and we don't forgive those who disrespect our dead." The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying their lost children home to rest among their own people. Within days, new laws appeared in galactic legal codes. The human protocols made it illegal to salvage vessels belonging to the species without verified permission. Museums returned human artifacts to empty space near Earth's coordinates. Collectors destroyed items rather than risk human attention. The lesson spread through every civilization. Humans were dangerous not because they were strong, but because they cared. They would do anything for their families, living or dead. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other human ships continued their voyages, knowing that if they never returned home, someone would come looking for them. The galaxy had learned the most important rule of survival: never touch what belongs to a human.